Alrighty, so here we go. It's time to fill out this very badly made bracket that I did for the knockout stage of this World Cup. And as much as I know that these predictions that I'm about to make might sound a bit crazy at time because, with how this World Cup has been, chaos is the name of the game, this World Cup. There has just been so many unexpected resort that I would not be surprised I might go with a very chaotic approach in terms of who I pick to win this World Cup and how these knockout stage game is going to be. But one thing I will also say is that unlike before, where when I do my bracket filling out for the MLS playoffs, as I did for the last couple of years, where I actually thought about it when I comes to looking at the brackets, I didn't really think about this. This is literally me just go straight into it and just kind of thinking it based on what my brain is and not really kind of what my heart is saying relatively quick. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna regret some of these predictions that I made, and I know some of these predictions are gonna be very bad. Though, if you're a longtime viewer of my channel, you would know that in my last MLS Cup playoff prediction, I got my prediction right when it comes to MLS Cup. I predicted that Inter Miami and Vancouver Whitecaps was going to meet in MLS Cup, and guess what happened? They met each other in MLS Cup. Now I got the winner wrong. That is, I picked Vancouver over Miami. Miami eventually did win against Vancouver, so who knows? Maybe lightning strike in the bottle twice, where I might actually pick the correct team to meet each other in the World Cup final in New York in a couple of weeks. But let's begin by looking at the left side first with Germany and Paraguay. Yeah, this one's pretty easy. This one is going to be Germany. As much as I know I want to go with some chaos, Paraguay, it's amazing the fact that they got to this stage. In fact, it's a bit of a miracle that they got into this stage as well. I mean, they had that miraculous win against Turkey as well. Have they not had that miraculous win or they drawn that game or even losing that game against Turkey, they would not be at this stage whatsoever. And while Germany at times have looked impressive, at times hasn't, they should have enough against Paraguay and should be able to move on. And then we got France and Sweden. I'm gonna say France. Sweden has definitely been one of those teams where I might have underappreciated how good Sweden is, and that I might have underrated them by a lot, and maybe kind of underestimate how good they were throughout the group stage. But yeah, they're running into a French machine, and if there is one team that has looked very impressive in the group stage tournament, and not a big surprise in this case, it's the French. I mean, France has looked so impressive in the group stage. They're an unstoppable machine, and I don't think Graham Potter is going to have more trick in this sleeve in terms of stopping this unstoppable force known as France. And then we got South Africa and Canada. Let's say Canada. And as I said before, Canada got very lucky. Like honestly, they could have easily played South Korea in this game, and that I'm not saying that South Korea is a bad matchup for Canada. South Korea isn't as good as what people thought it is. In fact, they turned out to be one of the more disappointing team in this World Cup. But with the way that they miss out their chance of getting home field advantage, and it looked like they were going to be the road team in that game against South Korea, because there's no doubt that if a South Korea versus Canada game happened in LA, it's a pro South Korean crowd. But instead, they got South Africa, so got to say that they definitely at least get a little bit of a home field advantage in terms of it. Though I think the neutral would definitely root for South Africa, considering the fact that this is another team that, just like Paraguay, I have no idea how they made it. I mean, some might say they have no business in terms of getting into this stage, but yeah, we'll see how they, of course, do and maybe cause more shock to this World Cup, especially cause more shock to where besides the 6-0 thrashing that they had against Qatar, they haven't really looked that impressive Canada in this World Cup, especially on the defensive end. That is. And then we got Netherlands versus Morocco. So this is one of the big criticism in terms of the World Cup, and a matchup that is one of those matchup where we're gonna see a couple of these round 32 matchup that are absolutely fire, but also at the same time it just feels very frustrating for some of these teams in some of the group. In fact, the whole Group F. I mean, there's a reason why it stands for Group F, because pretty much all the teams are pretty effed when it comes to who they face. I mean, Sweden finished third. Their reward is against one of the powerhouse in this World Cup in France. The Netherlands, of course, winning the group. Their reward is get to face last year dark horse Morocco, and then Japan, of course, finishing second. They're rewarded facing against a Brazilian Brazil team. So that group looked like it was screwed over in a big ways. But yeah, I'm gonna say the Netherlands will get this. And yeah, that means that obviously there's no miraculous semifinal run that Morocco has last time. Morocco, they haven't really looked as impressive as I thought they would be in this group stage. And this is kind of the thing when you were the dark horse in the last tournament, where maybe now teams are starting to figure it out. The hunter has definitely become the hunted, and yeah, Morocco has definitely become more of the hunted team. It feels like teams maybe starting to figure out Morocco a little bit better compared to the last tournament, in that they're not really catching anybody by surprise. And the Dutch has looked very impressive so far in this tournament. Besides that one hiccup game that they had against Japan, not able to hold on to the lead twice, they look like a classy in their other their game as well, and definitely look like a team that don't count out the Dutch. Maybe the Dutch are back when it comes to where they are. I mean, they're always are a team that can make deep run, and I feel like the Dutch can definitely do so in this World Cup. Then we got Portugal versus Croatia. This is another one of those mouth-watering matchup that is, but I'm gonna go with Croatia. And yes, that means that this will be potentially the last game that CR7 will play in his illustrious career. And the reason why I pick Croatia over Portugal is the fact that Portugal has not looked impressive at all in this group stage. I mean, even in the game against Colombia and that must-watch TV game, they just look really lackluster. And once again, CR7 kind of disappear here in that game. And it also kind of feel like this Portugal team, as much as they have a lot of good players on this team, how many times we said before, it's not about how good your team is and how brilliant that your team is when it comes to individual player. If you don't play it as a team and you don't have that chemistry to link all these individual player and play it as a team, then you're not going to get very far. And that is especially true in international competition. And it just feels like Portugal is one of those teams where they have the talent. I mean, the talent is definitely there. This team can easily make a World Cup final run, but they just can't figure it out. Like it just feels like there's so many broken pieces. It feels like the chemistry is just not there. And it also doesn't help the fact that they keep lumping the ball to CR7, and Ronaldo has really underwhelmed in this tournament in what is kind of his farewell tour. And while that is happening, Messi is still banging goals left, right, and center like it's no tomorrow. I mean, this World Cup's got to be a nightmare for Ronaldo fans, and maybe kind of end that debate a little bit in terms of who is actually the greatest player of all time in terms of how this World Cup is. And Croatia, even though they have kind of looked a little shaky in this tournament, do not count out Croatia. Croatia is still a very pucky kind of team, and they've shown it as well. Where when they do face some adversity, they somehow overcomes it, and they overcome it in the game against Ghana as well, and they overcome it in the game against Panama as well. Even if they don't play the prettiest soccer, and this is not the free flowing Croatian team that we've seen before as well. And then we got Spain and Austria. That is, yeah, it's Spain. So Austria's, they were involved just a moment ago of that crazy game that they had against Algeria. But unfortunately, coming into this game, we kind of knew Austria favored the fact that, yeah, on one hand, it's great that they, of course, will move on to the next round, but their reward is against Spain. Yeah, so that's not really the best reward. Although I will say that if there is a time to face Spain, this might be the time to do so, because Spain has been very underwhelming in this World Cup. I think besides that one game that they had against oh god, who did they face in the middle game? I can't really quite think of it straight away, because this is a bit of a late night video of me doing the bracket. I'm pretty sure Spanish fan can remember which team they face in the second game that is. But yeah, besides that, they just have looked very underwhelming in this World Cup. Even the Uruguay game, if it wasn't for the goalkeeping howler, that could have been a 0-0 draw, just like the one that they had against Cape Verde. But I do think that the quality will show up on this team. You would assume things will click, especially if Lamine Yamal continue to look like a star, and know that, yeah, he's got to be the guy to do, though. He can't just keep passing the ball and be unselfish. He knows that his teammates ain't gonna finish it, so he's got to be the man. And if he is the man, Spain will definitely have enough over Austria in this one. And then we got the U.S. and Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm going to pick the U.S. just because of bias, but do not underestimate Bosnia. Do not do what that LA journalist did earlier today in terms of being a little bit too cocky in terms of it, and yeah, we know how it works when you decide to be very cocky about a game that hasn't even started. The sports gods does not like that as well, and let's just hope that doesn't come back to haunt the U.S. in this one. On paper, the U.S. have more quality than Bosnia, that is. But as I said before, I just kind of feel like this game is very similar to the game that the U.S. play in the group stage, where they're facing against teams that are probably gonna bunker. They're gonna have to try to break down the bunker. And this is where it's going to be the same thing I said in the Australia versus Paraguay game. If the U.S. can get an early goal against Bosnia, then they're going to win this one. If they cannot get an early goal, and the longer this stays 0-0, the more I worry about the U.S. and the more I think Bosnia will potentially pull this off because, that's kind of what Bosnia is not known for. They're going to defend deep. They're going to frustrate the hell out of you, and they will also be optimistic on the other end in terms of scoring a goal. And also, the last thing the U.S. need in this one is to go down uh, in the score line. I mean, yes, they did face some adversity against Turkey. They were able to overcome, and then they didn't overcome because they gave up a goal in the last second. That is, but we'll see how this game, of course, will turn out. And that I feel like the formula for the U.S. winning against Bosnia is going to be the same formula they're going to have to execute very well against Australia and Paraguay, and that is score an early goal, calm things down, maybe get an insurance goal, and then just kind of ride this out because we know that if the U.S. can go up one or even two nothing, it might be enough for them to move on since Bosnia doesn't really have a lot of quality going forward and definitely doesn't have the quality in terms so trying to come from behind and get a resort. And then we got Belgium and Senegal. Ooh, this is a tough one. Ooh, I'm gonna say Senegal. I know this is a really tough one because Senegal they have been kind of an interesting team to watch. They were part of that tough group where they saw Norway and France. They lost both of those games. That is, but they look very impressive against Iraq. Though, how much is that because of it's Iraq? Belgium on the other end, it's kind of the same thing. I feel like both of these teams kind of had the same story in the group stage where they beat up against teams that they should be. They look very underwhelming against top tier teams. So what happened when they face against each other? That it could really go either way. I think this is a real point flip. I'm just gonna give the edge to the Senegalese because I think their attack is much stronger than Belgium, and I know that's crazy to say, but they have some good attacking talent. This Senegal team. People forget how good this Senegalese attack is, and it's not just Sadio Mane who's kind of the man that is. There are some more dangerous weapon that the Senegalese team has had. Belgium, of course, also have some dangerous men as well. Something tells me Romelu Lukaku will rescue this team down the line because that's what he's been doing throughout this World Cup. But I just think Senegal will have just enough to move on to the next round. But I would not be surprised it can go either way. If there is a prediction I'm gonna get wrong for sure, I think this is the one I'm not gonna be too upset because it really is a coin flip. And the same with the next one, Brazil and Japan. This is really a coin flip, but just because I'm kind of a little biased because I root for Japan, I think they're gonna pull off the upset. I mean, would you say it's an upset that Japan beat Brazil? I guess it is because Brazil has definitely played much better in the last couple of group stage game. Now, how much is that because of the fact that they were facing against weaker opponent? I mean, beating up both Scotland and Haiti, that's kind of expected in Brazil. In the game against Morocco, they did pretty well in that game. Probably should have won that one. They were the better team, but now they're facing against a Japan team that this Japan team is very organized and very disciplined, and it's a team that a lot of people picked to be the dark horse team, and a lot of people picked that this is the Morocco of this year's tournament, and I'm hoping that of course is the case because as I said, this is one of the teams that I'm rooting for in this World Cup, and maybe my bias will say that Japan will do it, and that again, this is a tournament of chaos as well and upsets. So this definitely have upset written all over it. Even though would not be surprised if Brazil get the resort in this one and somehow will go deep because Carlo Ancelotti team usually know how to do in tournament. And then we got Ivory Coast and Norway. Who this is kind of this might be very controversial that I'm picking Ivory Coast over Norway. because I think Ivory Coast has actually been underestimated, and they've been flying under the radar as well. They have looked really good so far in this tournament. I mean, the only loss that they've suffered was against Germany, if I'm not mistaken, and that game was them giving up a last minute goal as well. I mean, they almost pull off of a resort as well, and they also almost won that game as well. They missed a big chance before the Unda goal that won the game for Germany as well. And Norway, I'm not saying that Norway is going to just be like be a paper tiger in this one. Norway's definitely going to challenge Ivory Coast because of the attack that is. I also have a feeling this game is going to be crazy when it comes to the goal scoring. I would not be surprised. There's going to be a lot of goals in this game as well because while Norway is very good going for on the attack, we know the ability that Holland will produce. I am very concerned about the defense of this team. The defense for this Norwegian side has not been great whatsoever in this tournament. So yeah, that is probably going to be the reason why I think Ivory Coast will do it, and that again they've looked very impressive. Able to beat their last opponent, which I think who did they play in the last game again? It's late at night. I'm sorry to forgetting some of the opponents that they face in match day free. I know they beat Ecuador and they lost Germany. That is the one more opponent that I can't think of right now. In fact, I probably should just Google it because since it's late at night, might as well just Google and look at what group they were in. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at here. Carousel. That was the team. They were able to win big against Carousel, which is expected. That is, but yeah, I think it's gonna be Japan and Ivory Coast. I know everybody think it's Brazil versus Norway, but as I said, I'm going with a very chaotic kind of approach because that's how this World Cup is. And then we got Mexico and Ecuador. This is another tough one as well because this is another one I think it could go either way. I'm gonna go with Mexico mainly because I think the home field advantage will prevail them. I mean, when it comes to the altitude advantage, Mexico and Ecuador, this is probably one of the few matchups where Mexico doesn't really get the advantage in terms of altitude because Ecuador also play in altitude. In fact, Ecuador play even higher altitude than what Mexico does because I think Quito is actually much higher than where City is. But I think Mexico will do it in terms of not only getting the home field advantage, but also I'm still very concerned about Ecuador and the lack of goal scoring. I mean, I know there's an old saying that defense wins championship, and it kind of proved why Ecuador was able to move on into the next round. But at some point, you still got to score the goals because if the goals are not there, that's it's going to be a huge issue. And we know this Mexico side. I know some people have said that they don't really look as good as they as on paper is, and they might be playing against some relatively easy team, and a lot of people say, well, let's see what happens when they do play a real team. This is going to be the real team. This is going to be the first big test for this Mexican side, and one that I think if you're Mexico, facing against how good this Ecuador defense is, you just got to be patient. When it comes to this Ecuador team, you're gonna eventually get chances. You don't want to overcommit because that's what Ecuador wants to do. But yeah, in the end, I'm gonna say Mexico will do it. I think this will be the first time that Mexico has won a knockout stage. It has been a very long time since Mexico has last won a knockout stage, but I think this will finally be the year to do so. And then we got England and Congo. I think England will do it. And it's going to be a frustrating game, similar to the Ghana versus Panama game. I think England's going to get frustrated again, and I know people will once again question whether or not England is considered to be on fraud alert. But I think they'll have enough quality. I think they'll eventually find a way to get the goals that they need, or if they don't find the goals they need it, then they'll probably do it in extra time or do it the hard way in the penalty kick shootout. And I know when it comes to PK shootout in England, yeah, those two things don't usually go well in any sort of tournament. But I think that they should have enough in this one. Not saying that the Congo is a light work. I mean, this Congolese team is a pretty good team. I mean, that guy Wisa, I think that is going to be a guy that England's got to be paying very close attention because he has been huge for this Congo team. He's been a goal scoring threat for that team as well. So yeah, that's gonna be something that England's got to be careful, but I think they should have enough to move on to the next round. Then we look at Argentina and Cape Verde, and unfortunately, it's got to be Argentina. As much as I would want to go with the nuclear option and put Cape Verde, yeah, Argentina's gonna win this one. As the old saying goes, all Cinderella story the struck midnight, and I just feel like it's gonna strike midnight. But whatever happened in this game, like what I said before, it doesn't matter if Cape Verde get absolutely destroyed in this game. It doesn't matter if Messi scored like five against Cape Verde in this one. It's been a great story for Cape Verde. Cape Verde sort of getting to this stage. It's going to be remembered for a very long time. The name Vozinha is going to be remembered for a very long time. Talk about an unsung hero and just a guy that just instantly made himself a name. And if you would have wished that if he was a little bit younger, like if he was still in his 20s, he would have absolutely got a big move from somewhere else. But because he's now 40 and near the twilight of his career, most likely he's not going to get a big move. But one thing he will always remember is this legendary run, or shall I say, a legendary UNC run that it seems like he is going for right now. But as I said, the clock will always struck midnight on a Cinderella story, and against Argentina, yeah, that's. I'm not crazy enough to say that Argentina is gonna lose to Cape Verde. That would be way too insane of a thing to think about, even with the chaotic nature we've seen in this World Cup. And then we got Australia versus Egypt. Well, you talk about a matchup that is also very that can go either their way because yeah, Egypt had times they've looked good. At times they have not looked good. The same goes with Australia as well. At times they look good. The Turkey game was an example, but then the other game they kind of look a little underwhelming. So yeah, it's another one of those coin flip ones. So, and it's also kind of a matchup to see who, of course, will probably get absolutely smacked by Argentina in the round of 16. So I'm gonna go with Egypt just because Egypt have a little bit more quality than Australia. Mo Salah probably will score the winning goal, or at least Marmoush probably might be scoring the winning goal. But I think Egypt just have a little bit more quality and be able to solve this Australian team that they had a pretty good run in this tournament, but most likely they're going to be out in the round of 32, and if not, probably when they face against Argentina, they'll probably get absolutely destroyed in that round. And then we got Switzerland and Algeria. Yeah, Switzerland. Yeah, Switzerland, they're kind of a team that in this tournament, after that hiccup that they had against Qatar, it's been a nice rebound by this Swiss side. I mean, it feels like this tournament so far for the Swiss has kind of gone according to what I expected them to do. It's not a flashy team. It's not a team that will wow a lot of people, but it's a team that will get resort and able to move on into the next round and to be able to actually I say that they haven't got impressive resort. I would say the Canada resort was pretty impressive considering that they had to hostile environment and still able to walk away with a win and finish top of the group. And as a result, they get a relatively easier draw against an Algeria side that was involved in that crazy game against Austria. But yeah, this is not a good team. Algeria, they're along with Austria. It feels like as much as I talk about that crazy game, both of those teams might have put some crazy fireworks, but let's be honest, both of these teams probably don't are not gonna go very far in the tournament. So I'm gonna put the Swiss to be there. Colombia and Ghana. It's gonna be Colombia. Colombia has looked very aggressive in some of these group stage games. I mean, this is definitely a team that I know a lot of people have mentioned dark horses in this tournament, and usually that's a bad thing to do because anytime when a team is labeled as a dark horse, it doesn't go well. I'm gonna say Colombia might be that dark horse team. They definitely have a lot of weapons. The main weapon of this team is actually not Luis Diaz or James Rodriguez. It's actually Daniel Munoz. I mean, Daniel Munoz has been a huge weapon for this Colombian team. It was really shocking to see how he didn't get into this game until relatively late. But even that is the case. Colombia was doing very well against Portugal. They really were the better team against Portugal. The only knock I would have with Colombia in this in this tournament is that their finishing has not been great. The finishing has been pretty woeful. That is going to be something that they have to improve in these knockouts stage, especially when they face against tougher team where they're not going to get as much chances as we've seen in this tournament. But despite that, they've been very impressive, and I think they'll move on easily against a Ghana team that Ghana is okay in terms of how they did in the group stage, but let's be honest, when they face against a good team like what we saw against Croatia, they did not do very well, and they were very lucky to even get a point against England. Like that was peak Haram ball that Ghana play, and they pretty much did a Cape Verde in that game of able to somehow in some way got a 0-0 draw against a European powerhouse. And then we move on into the left side of the bracket. Look what we have here. We have Germany and France in the round of 16. Again, this is why, as much as I know FIFA is salivating that they're getting a lot of good matchup, it sucks the fact that we're getting a lot of good matchup in the early round because Germany and France should be at least a quarterfinal and semifinal matchup, not a round of 16 kind of matchup. But I'm gonna go with the French in this one. Again, France has way too many quality. Germany still have a lot of question on this team. I think France should be have enough to be able to knock the German out in this one. So yeah, they're gonna be moving on to the next round. Netherlands and Canada. I'm gonna say Netherlands. I'm actually gonna speed this up a little bit because I don't want to spend too long talking about this video and make this video too long since it's actually getting close to 11 o'clock. I want to go to sleep as soon as this video finished since I'm started getting a little tired. But yeah, I'm going to pick the Netherlands to beat Canada as well. Pretty obvious reason. The Dutch has so much more talent on the attacking end and the defensive end. In Canada, while they might have enough against South Africa, they have a very leaky backline. Yeah, that Dutch attack is going to eat that leaky backline to sleep in that game. And then we got Croatia and Spain. Again, this is another one of those matchups, just like what I said about Germany and France. This could have been easily a quarterfinal or a semifinal kind of matchup. And you know what? I'm gonna say Croatia will do it. Yes, I know Croatia. I'm gonna pick Croatia once again to go on a deep run. You know, these last two tournaments, they have been proven that they have been able to go on deep run. And I also think that this is kind of the last hurrah of the golden generation. And even though this golden generation is not the same quality as we've seen in previous World Cup, they're definitely making a good last hurrah. And the thing about Spain is, again, you know, for Spain, they just have not looked impressive so far in this tournament and that you know that ticky tacky kind of style of play that they tried to do, it just hasn't really quite worked out as much as they hoped for. And running into a Croatia team that they're a team that again, it's not a flashy team compared to the good Croatian team, but they're always a team that somehow will get it done at the end. Somehow will always come with a big goal and move on to the next round and has that very kind of tough mentality. And I think that might be enough to knock out Spain, and especially Spain has had a history when it comes to them thinking that they could go all the way, especially with the talent that they had, and they just stumble either in the early round or later in the round, and I think they probably could stumble in this one. Croatia doesn't seem like it's a very good matchup for Spain, that is, and especially if Spain can't figure out that attack that has been kind of very lifeless besides their own one of the few group stage games that they have, yeah, they're not going to be able to do well when they face a Croatia team that, again, a lot of people are underrating this Croatia team again. And I think Croatia would take it. They don't care if they're getting underrated. That really kind of fueled them in terms of going deep in this tournament. And then we get USA and Senegal. I'm going to say the US will do it. Yes, I know. I say the US will get to the quarterfinal. That has not happened since 2002, and to this day, I believe that's one of the furthest that they've gone in the World Cup. No, I think didn't they win to the semis one time? Either way, the last time I remember the U.S. win this deep into the tournament, it was back in 2002, and you know the whole reason why I think the U.S. could beat Senegal is just because you know the U.S. will somehow outscore Senegal. I mean, they already did well against Senegal, and again, you know, when it comes to who I rather face between Belgium and Senegal, it's got to be Senegal. The U.S. look very comfortable when they play against Senegal in the friendly, and I know it was just a friendly, but I think they'll do well. Again, it's that's familiarity and also the home field advantage as well that will help them move on into the quarterfinal as well. So yeah, I'm gonna say the U.S. of course will make it there, even though I can't wait to see how wrong that will be in terms of the fact that I know the U.S. is not gonna win the World Cup, but I can't wait to see how wrong I am and the fact that I maybe put them to go deeper than I think they should be. And then we look at the other matchup, Japan versus Ivory Coast. I'm gonna say Japan. Yeah, it's part of that dark horse kind of mentality. I think Japan is gonna if they can knock off Brazil, I do think Japan will have a chance to beat either both Ivory Coast and Norway. Those are two teams that I think Japan can definitely beat if they can pass the Brazil test. Obviously, there's no guarantee that of course is the case. I mean, if it was Brazil versus either Ivory Coast or Norway, I mean, if it is Brazil and Norway, that's going to be absolute cinema. But I think Brazil will definitely have more quality over the other teams that they have. But I pick Japan to cause the upset, and I still think that Japan has more quality compared to the two teams I mentioned with Ivory Coast and Norway. So yeah, I think they're going to move on into the next round. Then we get Mexico and England. Oh boy, this is a matchup that what's kind of interesting about this matchup is that have England remember the haunted memories of 1986, and the reason why I mention that is because 1986 in that game against Argentina, everybody remember two big moments in that game. One was the goal of the century that Maradona scored against England at the Azteca, but then everybody also remember the infamous hand of God moment that England was on the wrong end of it. So is history going to repeat itself? Especially with the way that Mexico not only get the home field advantage, but England had to uh, to worry about the high altitude, and that could be a big concern. Yes, I think Mexico's going to do it. That that's what I am thinking that could be the difference because again, for this England team, when they face against Mexico, I think Mexico is gonna do the same strategy of what a lot of team has done to England, which is they're going to bunker in. They're gonna make life hard on England. Thing about England is that they can dominate the possession all they want against Mexico. But when we get deeper into the game, which is kind of where I expect England to maybe eventually find the opener, I don't know if they have that enough energy to do that in altitude against Mexico, especially in that home home crowd as well. So that's why I do worry that might be the downfall for England in that game, and because of that, I'm gonna put Mexico in the quarterfinal. And keep in mind, Mexico the last two times when they made it or hosted a World Cup, both of those times they made it to the quarterfinals. So it looks like this is gonna be history repeat itself, at least from what I predicted with Mexico being in the quarterfinal. Then we look at Argentina and Egypt. Yeah, it's Argentina. Again, I know people will be very upset that Argentina virtually have a cakewalk when it comes to their free pass to the quarterfinal. But hey, as the old saying goes, you can only play against who is in front of you, and it's not their fault that they were involved of a easy kind of group. I mean, they're just gonna have to take care of business. I think they'll take care of business against Egypt, and then Switzerland and Colombia. This might be a little bit tougher to predict than some people would definitely say immediately Colombia will do it. But again, this Swiss side, there's just something about the Switzerland side that they even though they don't have the flashy name, they will somehow always get things done. But in the end, I think Colombia will do it. I'm gonna go with the names there. I think the names are definitely there to provide the lift over the Swiss, and also not to mention it's been a while since the Swiss have made a deep run. They usually kind of fall apart around either the round of 16 or the quarterfinals. So yeah, I'm gonna say Colombia, of course, will make it into the quarter. Now, let's take a look at the left side of the bracket in the quarterfinal. France and the Netherlands. Man, oh man, this might be one of the best quarterfinal we have seen in recent memory, and one that it's hard to predict who's gonna do it. Hmm, Netherlands. Yes, I know. This sounds crazy. Everybody's picking France to go deep. Everybody is saying France is gonna go all the way, but again, this is a tournament about surprises, and I just really love this Dutch team. I really love the soccer that they play. I think Ronald Koeman has done a good job in terms of getting this Dutch team playing uh the way that they used to play, being a very fun team and very attacking kind of team that we haven't seen a Dutch team play for a relatively long time. And yeah, I think they can definitely go toe to toe with France as well. as good as France has all these good attacking moment, and they have done so well throughout this group stage. You just think that did they maybe peak too soon, and it feels like every single good team is always gonna do for one bad game. This maybe could be the bad game to do so. And let's also not forget the Dutch also have a pretty good defense as well. So with the way that their attack is hitting on all cylinder, and now their defense is also doing well as well, I think that might be enough to surprise everybody. And you'll be very surprised that I did not pick France to go beyond the quarterfinal. That is. So yeah, I think the Netherlands will make it. In this one category, Croatia and the US. It's gonna be Croatia. As much as I would really want to pick the US, I think Croatia. I know a lot of people would say that if the US does meet Croatia, that might be a much more ideal matchup compared to Spain or Portugal, as those are the two teams that I think the US would want to avoid. But I argue Croatia might be the team that the US would want to avoid the most because again, there's just something about this Croatian team. This is a team that know how to go deep in tournament. They've shown it in the last two tournament, and even though I know that was because of the golden generation, some of the golden generation is still there, and they're still able to do well. And not to mention, I can't believe a lot of people haven't mentioned this and give the props to. Well, their goalkeeper Livakovic. I mean, he is just. I wouldn't be surprised he might win goalkeeper of the tournament by the end of this, or the Golden Glove. That is, he has been just so huge throughout this tournament. He has been an absolute monster throughout this tournament. And if they can make a deep run again, I would not be surprised he's going to be the candidate to win the glove as well. So as a result, I'm going to say Croatia will make it to the semis. In another group, we have Japan and Mexico. Like I said, I say Japan is this year's Morocco, or not this year's Morocco, but last term in Morocco, and I'm gonna stick to my guns. I think Japan will make it to the semifinal. I know it's gonna be a tough game against Mexico, that is, but remember, I believe Mexico don't have home field they only have home field advantage until the round of 16, if I'm not mistaken. That is so yeah. Once I mean, they're still gonna get home field advantage when they play in the U.S. because obviously in the US there's a lot of Mexican fans out there. In fact, if I look on the bracket here, where do Mexico play in the quarterfinal if they get there? I believe they play in Miami for that game. So there's probably going to be some good support if that is the case, but because they're not going to have that altitude advantage. I mean, they're definitely going to get the humidity advantage as well. I wonder how Japan is going to deal with that. But again, I think if Mexico does face against Japan, it's kind of interesting that I remember Mexico and Japan play against each other in a friendly in Oakland back in September, and it was a 0-0 draw in that game as well. And there was not too much separate between both of these teams. I think it might be the same thing again in this one. But I'm just picking Japan just mainly because I think they just have a little bit more quality going forward. And also just because of the fact that Mexico won't really have that true home field advantage of playing at the Azteca. The Azteca is always a tough team, tough place to get wins as well. I think that might be enough for Japan to be able to move on. Have this game been at the Azteca, I would have probably maybe even picked Mexico to move on into the semifinal. And then we got Argentina and Colombia. Look at that. Did we see this before? Yeah, this was the Copa America final from a couple of years ago. Argentina won that one in extra time, and I have a feeling it's going to be similar to that. I think this is going to be a heck of a matchup, but I think in the end, Argentina is going to do it because, as I said, this is a team that has a cheat code known as Messi. Messi is just feeling it. I mean, Messi is just giving it all in this tournament. Wouldn't be surprised he might make a difference in this one against Colombia. Colombia is definitely gonna have revenge on their mind. I mean, they would love nothing to knock Argentina out and get the revenge after what happened in the Copa America in 2024. But ultimately, I think Argentina will have enough, and they'll make it into the semi again. And this is where we get to talk about the final matchup. Netherlands and Croatia. I can say the Netherlands. Yes, I'm picking the Netherlands to make it back to the World Cup for the first time since 2010. In fact, if this is going to be the semifinal matchup, we might see one of the team make it back to the final for the first time in not quite quite a long time because even though I say the Netherlands haven't made it to the final since 2010, I mean that's only been 16 years. That's only been a couple edition. Croatia, they make it. This will be the first time they've be back since 2018. That's only two editions ago. So yeah, this should be a heck of a matchup. I think on paper it's going to be relatively close. Usually that's kind of the case once we get into the semifinal stage, but in the end, the Netherlands, of course, will do that do it. I think they'll make it into the final. Again, I feel like I'm very highly rating the Dutch in this tournament, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think they can definitely go deep, and we've seen before where Dutch teams have been able to go deep before. I think didn't they go deep in the Nations League in UEFA just recently? And I know that's just the Nations League, but the Nations League are still they'll are involving good teams as well that we've seen teams take that competition very seriously as well, especially getting into to the final. So yeah, I do think that the Dutch will do that, and they'll definitely make an appearance in the final for the first time since 2010. And then we get Japan and Argentina. Yeah, I'm gonna put Argentina in here. I think they're going back to winning the World Cup final. It just feels like everything is lined up for Argentina to get to this stage. I mean, the only opponent that I think they have trouble in this run that I predicted is probably going to be Colombia. Colombia might be the toughest test. You can say Japan might be the same case, but I feel like Japan is going to run into the same issue as Morocco did, where it's a great Cinderella story, but it's going to eventually strike midnight, and I feel like it will strike midnight when they play Argentina in this game, which means that the third place matchup will be between Croatia and Argentina. Or I'm sorry, not Argentina, Japan. That is. Croatia was in the third place matchup, and I think they won the third place matchup against Morocco, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, let me just double check as well. I believe they did win the third place matchup. Yeah, they did. They won 2-1 in that game. So, do I pick them to win it again against Japan? No, I'm actually gonna say Japan. Again, I know this is might be crazy. This might be me just being biased, and fell in love with Japan being the ultimate dark horse, but that's just what this tournament is all about. It's all about chaos ball. I think Japan will have enough. I mean, as much as Croatia will be happy to finish third, again, the ultimate goal for them is to make it to the final, especially in this one last hurrah in terms of their golden generation. So I think they'll be a little bit unsatisfied if they have to settle for a third place match again, and this is where Japan will take advantage because Japan will be thrilled to be playing in the third place matchup. I don't think there's any Asian team has gone this deep into the tournament. Well, actually, that's wrong. There has been one Asian team that has gone all the way to the semifinal and have played a third place match. Forgot South Korea did that back in 2002, albeit it was in a very controversial way that is, and hopefully that might not be the same with my pick of Japan going all the way to the semifinal. That is, and eventually going to the third place and actually winning the third place match. Unlike how in that edition, South Korea actually didn't win their third place match in that World Cup. That is, but yeah, finally, in terms of my prediction, Netherlands versus Argentina in terms of the World Cup final, I think the Dutch will do it. I think the Dutch will finally win that elusive World Cup. It's hard to believe the Dutch have never won the World Cup. I mean, you look at the Dutch and their strong soccer history and all the great legends that has come in the games with the likes of Johan Cruyff, Robin van Persie, Iron Robin, or even back in like the 2010. It's just such a shame the fact that they ran into Spain in that 2010 final because that team just was loaded to hell. I mean that 2010 Spanish team had the likes of Carlos Puyol, Xavi, Sergio Busquets, and all those kind of loaded Barcelona guys. That is, it's just kind of unfortunate that they ran into to them because if they didn't ran into them, they probably would have won that whole thing. But yeah, it's kind of the same thing as well. Obviously, I know Messi will give his best in this one last hurrah, but I just think that if the Dutch will make it to the final, which I believe is this the third or fourth final that they made. Let me just do some quick research just to make sure I did this Dutch final. World Cup appearance. I believe this is their third or fourth. Um, yeah, this is gonna be yeah, this is gonna be their fourth because they made it back in '74 and '78. In '74 they lost to Germany. In '78. Oh, guess what? In '78 they lost to Argentina. So this is actually a rematch of the '78 World Cup. And again, you can maybe even throw into that storyline of the fact that this might be a revenge World Cup. And you know, the '78 World Cup, I believe that wasn't that taking place in Argentina. Yeah, it was. That was a very controversial World Cup. So I'm pretty sure the Dutch have not forgotten that World Cup of how they got screwed over big time. People forget that, you know, in terms of World Cup history, and I'm not gonna spend too much time doing a lecture of the about the World Cup history, but some of those early World Cups that we have, I mean, we talk about how there's controversy when it comes to World Cups being hosted in Qatar and Russia as well. Well, people forget that World Cup used to be hosted in country that, yeah, they probably shouldn't be hosting World Cup. Like, you know, I think there was like what World Cup was hosting in Spain as well, that was doing a dictatorship period. There was one that was hosting in Italy as well. And then of course the one in Argentina back when Argentina was still also under a dictatorship kind of government. So yeah, like I said, there's been some controversy in the past when it comes to the World Cup host, that is. So yeah, I think the Dutch will do it. I do think that this they will finally win their first World Cup, which is kind of crazy to say because we also talk about all these legends from this Dutch team. There's really not like when you look at this Dutch team. I mean, yes, there are some good names out there. Virgil van Dijk is one of the bigger names that is played for this team. But other guys on this team, I mean, yeah, there are names, but they're not like super big names that is on this team. I don't think Frankie De Jong is on this team. I think he's still injured. And then of course the other big name you have is Cody Gappo, and even Brian Bobby, who feels like Brian Bobby is having the Cody Gappo kind of tournament, because you know how in the last tournament where the Dutch was doing well and Cody Gappo was kind of that guy that came out of nowhere that did really well and eventually earned a big move. I feel like that's going to be the same case for Brian Bobby, who is just kind of having a Cody Gappo kind of arc in this tournament, where he's the guy that just came out of nowhere to be the goal scorer for this Dutch team, and they'll probably hope that he can continue that all the way to the final and eventually winning the World Cup itself. Yeah, I know it's crazy for me to pick the Dutch to win it. I know everybody's probably going to say France or Argentina. That is going to be the case because it just feels like maybe those two teams are on a collision course. But again, this tournament, the World Cup, expect the unexpected, and I think there is going to be some numerous upset, and that I also would think that I wouldn't be surprised when I look back at this, that how wrong I'm gonna get because of the way that, you know, I'm not the best when it comes to my prediction. Even though I got the MLS Cup prediction right last time, I was kind of shocked that I got it right. Like I would have never thought in a million year I would get a prediction of the exact teams that I predicted to make it to the final correct. So who knows? Maybe this might happen again, where maybe somehow in some way the Netherlands would somehow made it to the final and they meet Messi, seeing it his friends in the final in New York in just a couple of weeks. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.